Harry and Meghan are coming back. But that's not the story everyone should be watching. The real story is happening 200 miles away, inside Kensington Palace, where William and Kate have reportedly gone quiet. No statement, no comment, no public reaction at all. And in royal circles, silence like that is never just silence. Sources close to the palace suggest the couple's private response has been very different from their public one, and what's being described behind closed doors may reshape the entire Sussex-Wales relationship for years to come. So what is William and Kate actually doing right now? Why has the palace machine, usually so quick to respond, gone completely still? And why does their silence matter more than anything Harry or Meghan could possibly say when they land? Stay with us, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly what's reportedly happening behind that silence, and why insiders believe it could define the next chapter of this family. To understand why this moment matters so much, you have to go back to where things stood before any of this began. Since Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, the relationship between the Sussexes and the Waleses has been reported as strained at best. Public appearances together have been rare, carefully choreographed, and, according to multiple royal commentators, largely symbolic rather than warm. Every joint appearance since has been picked apart frame by frame. Who stood where, who spoke to whom, who avoided eye contact, and who lingered a second too long near the cameras. William, as heir to the throne, has reportedly taken an increasingly central role in managing the family's public image, especially as King Charles's health and workload have become subjects of ongoing speculation. With so much uncertainty already surrounding the monarchy's future, insiders suggest William has worked hard to project calm, stability, and control, both publicly and within the family itself. Every decision, every appearance, every word chosen for a public statement is reportedly weighed carefully, because William understands that the public is watching him not just as a prince, but as a future king already being judged on how he handles pressure. Kate, recovering her own public profile after a difficult period, has focused heavily on projecting normalcy and unity for the monarchy. Her public engagements have been described by royal watchers as carefully paced, deliberately warm, and clearly designed to reassure the public that the future of the family is in steady hands. She has become, in many ways, the emotional anchor of the family's public image, someone the public trusts to represent warmth and continuity, even when everything else around the monarchy feels uncertain. Into that carefully managed picture steps news that Harry and Meghan may be returning, not necessarily to royal duties, but to a more visible presence in the UK and in royal-adjacent public life. For a family that has spent years trying to control the narrative, an unscheduled return is not a small thing. It's a variable nobody at the palace can fully predict. And according to those familiar with how the family operates, unpredictability is the one thing William has reportedly tried hardest to eliminate from his public life. When news like this breaks, palace communications teams usually move fast. A brief statement, a diplomatic quote, something to control the story before tabloids do it for them. That's standard practice. It's how the institution has operated for decades, carefully managing every headline before it has the chance to spiral out of control. This time, nothing. According to royal watchers, that silence is deliberate. William is said to be extremely cautious about being seen to react at all, worried that any comment, supportive or critical, will be picked apart and turned into a headline that follows him for weeks, maybe months. Kate, meanwhile, is reportedly focused on keeping her own public schedule and image separate from anything Sussex-related entirely, sticking closely to her own initiatives and appearances as if the story simply isn't happening around her. But insiders close to Kensington Palace suggest the calm public face is hiding a far more tense private conversation, one about optics, timing, and what a Harry and Meghan return could mean for William's own long-term plans as future king. Because here's the thing, William doesn't just have to think about family, he has to think about strategy. Every decision he makes now is reportedly viewed through the lens of what kind of king he wants to become, and how a very public, very scrutinized family reunion could shape that image before he's even taken the throne. Multiple royal commentators have pointed to a specific concern driving this silence: control of the narrative. For years, William has reportedly worked to position himself and Kate as the stable, dependable center of the monarchy's future, especially with King Charles's health drawing constant attention from the press and public alike. Every appearance, every public statement, every carefully timed photograph has been built around that image of quiet reliability, brick by brick, over years of careful planning. A high-profile Sussex return threatens to pull attention away from that narrative at a moment William can least afford it. Sources suggest his team has been quietly monitoring how the story develops in the press, ready to respond if needed, but determined not to be the one who reacts first. In palace politics, insiders say, whoever speaks first often loses control of how the story gets framed for everyone else. It becomes their headline to defend, rather than someone else's story to explain. Kate's position is said to be slightly different from William's more strategic approach. Reports suggest she's less concerned with the politics of it and more focused on protecting a sense of normalcy for her children, particularly if a Sussex return means increased public appearances involving both branches of the family. Those close to her have suggested she's especially protective of keeping her children's day-to-day lives away from the intensity that surrounds any Harry and Meghan headline, having seen firsthand how quickly these stories can spiral into something far bigger than anyone anticipated. Whether or not that tension boils over into anything public remains to be seen. But those close to the family suggest it's already shaping conversations happening far from any camera. Quiet conversations, according to some reports, that are more pointed and more honest than anything the public has ever been allowed to see. Any story about a Sussex return inevitably circles back to Meghan, and how the Wales household reportedly views her specifically, separate from Harry entirely. Royal commentators have long suggested that much of the tension in this family dynamic centers less on Harry and more on how Meghan's presence is perceived to have changed the family's public relationships permanently. Some reports describe Kate as cautiously open to rebuilding a working relationship if the circumstances allow it, and if any reunion happens on terms that feel controlled rather than reactive and forced. Others suggest William remains far more guarded, reportedly still processing years of public disagreements playing out in books, interviews, and documentaries that he had little control over at the time. If Harry and Meghan's return does bring the two couples into the same physical space, even briefly, even for something as simple as a family event or a public gathering, every glance, every handshake, every seating arrangement will be analyzed by royal watchers within minutes of the photos going public.
I think the Queen
That's not speculation. It's simply what's
imagined it.
happened every single time these two couples have appeared anywhere near each other in recent years, and there's little reason to think this time would be any different. That pressure alone, some insiders suggest, may be part of why William and Kate have chosen to stay quiet for as long as possible. The less they say now, the less there is to walk back later, and the less ammunition there is for a story to spiral beyond their control before they're ready to address it on their own terms. Behind the scenes, insiders suggest palace aides have already begun preparing for the moment silence is no longer possible, because eventually it never is. Every royal event on the calendar between now and any potential Sussex return is reportedly being reviewed with one question in mind. Could this become the moment reporters ask William or Kate directly about Harry and Meghan? And if so, what's the safest possible answer that protects everyone involved? Royal commentators note that this kind of quiet contingency planning is standard practice for the institution, but the fact that it's reportedly being taken so seriously this time suggests just how high the stakes are seen to be internally. A misstep here, insiders say, isn't just a bad headline that fades in a week. It's a moment that could define public perception of the entire family for years to come, shaping how millions of people around the world see this family's ability to heal or their unwillingness to. Some reports suggest Kate has privately expressed a desire to keep things civil, even warm, if a meeting becomes unavoidable, prioritizing the idea of presenting a united family image to the public, regardless of the private history involved between everyone. William's approach, according to multiple sources, is said to be more cautious, polite if required, gracious if the moment calls for it, but with no intention of appearing to fully reset the relationship until there's clarity on what a Sussex return actually means long-term for the family and for the monarchy's future. And that difference in approach between William and Kate may be the most telling detail of all, according to those watching closely. It suggests two people who love each other and stand united publicly, but who are quietly navigating this moment with very different instincts underneath the surface. Eventually, someone will ask William or Kate directly, a reporter, a public appearance, an unavoidable question shouted across a rope line at an event. And when that happens, royal commentators suggest their response will be almost as significant as the return itself, maybe even more so. A warm, welcoming statement could be read as reconciliation and would likely dominate headlines for days, reshaping public perception of the entire family dynamic overnight in ways that are difficult to undo. A cool, diplomatic non-answer could reinforce the narrative of ongoing family tension, giving tabloids and commentators weeks of material to dissect, analyze, and speculate about. Either way, the moment they're forced to speak, they lose the control they've reportedly been trying so hard to maintain since this story first broke into public view. Some royal insiders believe the palace is already preparing carefully worded language for exactly this scenario, something that sounds gracious without committing to anything specific, something that can be read multiple ways depending on what the public wants to see in it. A statement designed to satisfy everyone, and in doing so, perhaps satisfy no one completely. Whether that's enough to quiet public curiosity or whether it only fuels more speculation and more headlines is another question entirely, one that may not be answered until the moment actually arrives. There's also the question of timing, which royal watchers say could shape everything. If Harry and Meghan's return happens gradually, quietly, without a single defining moment, William and Kate may be able to avoid ever having to give a direct, on-the-record reaction at all. But if it happens suddenly, publicly, tied to a specific event or announcement, the pressure to respond immediately would be almost impossible to avoid, no matter how carefully the palace has prepared. Some commentators believe this uncertainty around timing is exactly why the silence has stretched on as long as it has. Nobody inside the palace, according to these reports, actually knows which version of this story they're going to be dealing with yet. And until they do, staying quiet is being treated as the safest possible option, even if it comes at the cost of public speculation filling in the blanks themselves. So here's what it really comes down to. Harry and Meghan's return isn't just a Sussex story. It's a test of everything William and Kate have spent years building, quietly and carefully, brick by brick. Their silence right now isn't indifference. According to those close to the situation, it's calculation, a deliberate attempt to control a moment they know they can't fully control, no matter how much planning goes into it behind the scenes. And that tension between wanting to look unified as a family in front of the world and needing to protect a very specific public image William has spent years constructing for his own future may end up being more revealing than anything Harry or Meghan actually do or say when they return. Because the public isn't just watching Harry and Meghan right now, they're watching William, they're watching Kate, and they're waiting to see whether the family everyone grew up believing in can handle a moment like this with grace, or whether the cracks will finally show for everyone to see. The real story was never really about the Sussexes coming back. It's about what their return forces William and Kate to finally decide, and whether the version of unity the public sees will be real or simply the most carefully managed performance the palace has ever put together. So what do you think? Is William and Kate's silence a sign of quiet tension bubbling under the surface, or just smart, calculated palace strategy playing out exactly as planned? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you want to see how this story develops from here, make sure you're subscribed, because there's another major update involving Princess Anne's role in all of this that we'll be covering very soon, and it might explain even more about what's really happening behind palace doors right now. Thanks for watching Crown Signal Report. We'll see you in the next one. Let's go a little deeper, though, because there's more to this story that's worth understanding before you form your own opinion on it. One thing royal commentators keep coming back to is the sheer scale of what's at stake for William personally. This isn't just about a family disagreement playing out in public. William is being watched constantly as a preview of the kind of king he's going to be. Every reaction, or lack of reaction, becomes a data point the public uses to judge his temperament, his fairness, and his ability to lead a family, and eventually a country, through difficult moments. That's an enormous amount of pressure to carry into what should, on paper, be a fairly personal family matter. Royal historians have pointed out that this isn't the first time a family rift has played out under intense public scrutiny, but it may be the first time it's happened with social media, 24-hour news cycles, and global tabloid coverage all working at once. Previous generations of royals had the luxury of time. Disagreements could simmer privately for years before ever reaching the public. William and Kate don't have that luxury. Every week that passes without an official reaction is a week filled with think pieces, speculation videos, and headlines trying to fill the silence themselves. That's part of why insiders suggest this situation is being treated with such extreme caution. It's not just about managing one news cycle, it's about setting a precedent for how the palace handles Harry and Meghan going forward, for as long as William remains heir and eventually king. Whatever tone gets set now, deliberately or not, is likely to define the relationship's public framing for years. There's also a financial and institutional angle that rarely gets discussed openly, but that insiders say is quietly part of these conversations. The monarchy's public support has fluctuated in recent years, and royal commentators have noted that public sentiment toward the family can shift quickly based on how situations like this are handled. A family seen as petty or unwilling to reconcile risks, looking out of touch. A family seen as too eager to smooth things over risks, looking as though real grievances were never taken seriously in the first place. Threading that needle, according to those familiar with palace communication strategy, is exactly why nothing has been said yet, because getting it wrong in either direction carries real consequences for how the institution itself is perceived. Then there's the question of what Harry and Meghan themselves might do to shape the narrative before William and Kate ever have to say a word. If their return comes with interviews, statements, or their own carefully framed messaging, it could effectively force William and Kate's hand, making the palace's silence look less like careful strategy and more like they were caught off guard. Royal watchers suggest this is a real concern inside the palace right now. The fear of appearing reactive rather than in control, especially after years of criticism that the institution has struggled to keep pace with how quickly stories move today. Some commentators have also raised the question of what role, if any, King Charles might play in all of this. While much of the public conversation has centered on William and Kate, Charles's own relationship with Harry has had its own complicated history. If Charles's health continues to be a factor in royal planning, some suggest he may actually be more inclined toward reconciliation than William, seeing a potential return as an opportunity to resolve tensions while he still can. Whether that puts him at odds with William's more cautious approach is something royal insiders say is being watched closely within palace circles, even if it's never discussed publicly. None of this happens in a vacuum either. Public appearances already scheduled in the coming months will now be viewed through this exact lens, whether the palace likes it or not. Every royal engagement William and Kate attend between now and any confirmed Sussex return will be scrutinized for hidden meaning. A comment that seems slightly pointed, an absence that seems deliberate, a smile that seems just a little too practiced. That's the reality of operating under this level of public attention. Even ordinary moments stop being ordinary once a story like this is in the air. For William specifically, there's also the long game to consider. He's not just managing this week's headlines, he's managing a reputation that will follow him into a reign that could last decades. Royal commentators have pointed out that how he handles moments of family tension now may shape public trust in him long after this particular story fades from the headlines. A future king seen as someone who can navigate difficult family dynamics with maturity and restraint builds a very different public image than one who appears cold, distant, or unable to move past old conflicts. Kate's role in shaping public perception shouldn't be underestimated either. Many royal watchers argue she has become the emotional through line for how the public understands this family right now, someone whose reactions, however subtle, are read as more genuine than official statements. If she is seen extending warmth toward Meghan, even in a small private way, insiders suggest it could soften public opinion considerably, regardless of what William says or doesn't say publicly. All of this is why so many royal commentators believe this moment, however it eventually unfolds, is going to be remembered as a turning point, not necessarily because of anything dramatic that happens, but because of what it reveals about how this family handles pressure when the world is watching every move. So while the headlines this week are about Harry and Meghan coming back, the real story, the one worth paying attention to, is still what we opened with. It's not about the Sussexes at all. It's about what their return quietly forces William and Kate to become. Two people who now have to decide, in real time and under global scrutiny, exactly what kind of family they want the public to believe they are. There's one more layer to this worth mentioning before we wrap up, and it's something a lot of casual observers miss. Royal reconciliation stories rarely resolve in a single moment. They tend to unfold gradually, through small gestures rather than grand announcements. A private meeting that leaks days later, a shared appearance at a family occasion that wasn't originally expected to include everyone, a quietly worded comment from a spokesperson that hints at more than it says outright. If that pattern holds here, we may not get a single defining headline at all. Instead, we could see this story build slowly over weeks or months, with each small development picked apart by commentators like us and by millions of royal watchers around the world doing exactly what you're doing right now, trying to read between the lines. That's part of why this particular story matters so much beyond the initial news of Harry and Meghan's return. It's not really about one event. It's about a pattern that's going to keep unfolding piece by piece, and how each of those pieces gets read will shape public opinion long before any final resolution, if there ever is one, actually arrives. We'll be tracking every development as this story unfolds, so make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because the moment anything changes, we'll be the first to break it down for you.